I never realized the millionaire chef was listening as I sang while washing dishes. The kitchen was a symphony of clanging pots and sizzling pans, but my voice floated above it all. I scrubbed potatoes, a little too hard, tears pricking the corners of my eyes. I was alone, no one else in the old diner that night. The flickering fluorescent light hummed above me, but my heart sang a different tune, one fraught with longing. That day, everything had unraveled. My mother's illness loomed over us, shattering hopes like glass. The bills piled up like dirty dishes in the sink. I could feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. The diner was my refuge, the only place I could find solace, even when my heart was a tight knot. Suddenly, there was a presence behind me. The air thickened, as if the room held its breath. I turned, soapy hands trembling. Standing in the doorway was none other than him, the millionaire chef everyone whispered about. He looked like he belonged in a glossy magazine, not here, in this dingy diner. The mystery in his dark eyes sent a chill down my spine. Had he really been listening? My heart raced, pounding in my chest like a war drum. I stopped singing, unsure of what to say. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. There was something electric about him, a magnetic pull that made it hard to breathe. "You have a beautiful voice," he said, his voice smooth like honey. The compliment hung in the air, thick with possibility. His unexpected presence sparked a glimmer of hope, yet a knot of fear twisted in my stomach. "What are you doing here?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Did he see my struggle? Did he know about the mounting bills and the hospital visits? He stepped closer, his eyes boring into mine, and I felt exposed. "I'm searching for something," he started, but the words hung between us like an unbroken thread. What could he possibly be searching for in a place like this? A soft chime came from my phone, breaking the spell, a reminder for my mother's next appointment. My heart sank again. What kind of future could I offer her? I glanced back at the chef, but he was still watching me, curiosity etched on his face. The air was thick with tension, and my heart beat wildly in my chest. Then, just like that, he turned and walked away, leaving me breathless and confused. What had just happened? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The clang of pots faded into a haunting echo as I stood by the sink, still reeling from the encounter. My heart struggled to settle, adrenaline racing through me like a wild stallion. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a glow through the diner's grimy windows, the last light of day merging with my tangled emotions. I'd been so lost in my own world, trying to rise above the tide of despair surrounding me, that I hadn't considered the possibility of anyone, let alone someone like him, paying attention. For the rest of the shift, I scrubbed and wiped, lost in thoughts of a man who had set my heart ablaze with just a few words. I found myself glancing at the door, half expecting him to walk back in, his presence as tangible as the smell of simmering soup. As the hours dragged on, my feelings shifted from confusion to frustration. I shook my head at the absurdity of it. He was a millionaire chef in a fancy restaurant, a world away from my reality. What could possibly come of this fleeting connection? After closing, the diner felt even emptier. I rifled through the pile of bills at the counter, each one a reminder of reality's cruel grip. A sharp knock on the glass startled me, and I looked up to see a woman standing outside, shivering against the night. She looked familiar, though I couldn't place her at first. The moment she stepped inside, her kind eyes met mine. It was Mrs. Hargrove, my old neighbor, whose warmth was a rare comfort in my increasingly cold world. "Honey, you're still here?" she asked, her voice a soft balm against my frayed nerves. "I brought you some soup." Thought you could use a hot meal after this long day. She reached into her tote and pulled out a thermos. Oh, Mrs. Hargrove, you didn't have to. I protested, feeling guilty. Yet, as she unscrewed the lid, the rich aroma of seasoned vegetables and broth wafted toward me, filling the stale air with a flicker of warmth. Darling, please. I remember those nights dragging myself home, exhausted, and you've been through so much. It's just a little kindness, she said, her wrinkles softening her kind smile. That I accepted the thermos, grateful for the unexpected moment of humanity. Thank you, I said, my voice thick as I fought back tears. I poured the steaming soup into a bowl, the heat against my fingertips making me feel momentarily alive again. As I ate, I shared snippets of my day, of my mother, and of the worry creeping in with each passing moment. Well, whatever happens, you have this place. It's special, Mrs. Hargrove said, her eyes glistening. And you're special too. Just remember that. Her words hung in the air, settling deeply into my heart. I felt a flicker of hope reignite, a small warmth in the vast, cold expanse of uncertainty. As she finished her visit and prepared to leave, my heart filled with gratitude for moments like these, for the kindness of a neighbor who still remembered. But the next morning was bleak. I awoke to a cacophony of beeping phones, missed reminders, and a gut-wrenching silence from the other room. I dashed into my mother's room, only to find her looking more fragile than ever, her breaths shallow and labored. Panic surged through me. Mom! Have you taken your medication? I knelt beside her, dread pooling in my stomach. She shook her head weakly, and I scrambled to the bedside table, searching for the pill organizer. We need to call the doctor. Before I could finish, my phone vibrated violently on the table. I answered without looking, my other hand clutching my mother's, trying to impart strength through simple contact. Hello? A voice, cool and calculating, cut through the haze. This is Rebecca from the hospital billing department. We need to discuss your mother's account. If the payment isn't received soon, further action will be required. Action? I echoed, a swell of panic rising. My mother's conditions loomed over us, a great shadow of debt strangling our lives. I gripped my mother's hand tighter, fighting back tears that burned like acid in my throat. I'm trying to find a way. We can't hold off much longer. You have until the end of this week, she replied. Her tone devoid of any empathy. And just like that, the flame of hope I had felt earlier flickered violently, threatening to extinguish. As I hung up, an unsettling thought wormed its way into my mind. What would happen if I could never pay? The weight of the looming deadline dug deep, an anchor that threatened to pull me under. I looked at my mother, her eyes now clouded with confusion and pain, and in that moment, I felt time slow. My heart sank further as the reality of our situation crashed over me like an unforgiving tide. Then, the doorbell rang sharp and insistent. I wiped my tears hastily, reluctant to face whatever lay beyond. Throwing open the door, there stood the chef, the last person I expected to see. His expression was a tapestry of concern and determination, as if he knew I was at the edge of something profound. What's wrong? He asked, his voice now an anchor in the chaos surrounding me. I stood frozen, unable to articulate the turmoil threatening to engulf me as everything I felt began to collide, swirling into an emotional tempest that yearned for release. I stared at him as if he were a ghost materialized from my haunted dreams, the weight of everything pressing against my heart. What are you doing here? The words stumbled out, laced with disbelief as I took a cautious step back, a fragile wall of my own making trying to protect me from the mess I felt I was spiraling deeper into. He didn't answer right away, his gaze scanning the atmosphere inside the little house, the clutter of piled-up bills, the echoes of muted distress. I came to see if you were okay, he said slowly, as though he were treading carefully on an invisible tightrope. I was taken aback. There was sincerity in his concern, and it wrapped around my heart like a golden thread, tenuous yet powerful against the darkness that I wanted to let him in, to reveal the insides of my shattered life like a jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces. But my instincts kicked in, self-preservation twisted in my gut, and I forced a smile, the edges brittle. I'm fine, really. Just a bit overwhelmed, I insisted, but even I could hear the wavering in my voice. Your eyes tell a different story, he replied softly, stepping forward with a warmth that melted away the chill in the air. Can I come in? Against my better judgment, I nodded, stepping aside as he entered the room. I felt lightheaded, flabbergasted by this sudden twist of fate. My life was unraveling at the seams, and yet, here stood a man who held the power to change everything. That he looked around, his brows furrowing at the sight of my mother, frail and pale, nestled in a world of blankets and unfulfilled promises. Is she? He began tentatively, his voice trailing off, heavy with understanding. That I blinked back tears, fighting for composure. She's just tired. It's been a long struggle. The words felt flimsy, ill-suited, but they were the only ones I could muster amidst this brewing storm. That I know you're juggling a lot. You don't have to do it alone. His voice was almost a plea, and it swept through me with unexpected warmth. That I looked up at him, caught in a moment where the world felt like it had reversed itself. A million thoughts whirled inside my head, but one anchored firmly: I was not enough alone. You don't even know me, I said, the fear creeping back. You don't know what I'm facing, what it feels like to be drowning in bills, in worry, in grief. Then let me help you understand, he said, his expression earnest. Tell me what's wrong. I want to listen. For a split second, the floodgates began to creak open. My lips trembled as I fought the urge to spill everything: the burden of my mother's illness, the fear of losing her, the crushing weight of mounting debt. And yet, with every ounce of desperation gathering in my chest, a whisper of skepticism held me back. What could a man like him truly know about my struggle, the grit of everyday survival? Then, as if summoned by my internal conflict, my mother stirred on the couch, her voice a frail reminder of where a heavy silence could lead. Who's visiting, dear? She was disoriented, struggling to find her footing in reality, her eyes blinking slowly as if waking from a long, dark dream. Before I could answer, he took a step closer, articulating his words with a gentleness I hadn't expected from a man who commanded the kitchen of a lavish restaurant. I'm just a friend. Trying to help your daughter. This drew my focus back to him, a contrast between the lavish lifestyle he must have led and the raw, visceral reality that enveloped us. Was he really here for me, or was this one of those fleeting moments of kindness that would evaporate under the harsh light of day? The uncertainty felt like a barbed wire wrapped around my heart, but amidst it all, I saw quiet courage in his eyes, urging me not to retreat. Listen, I know the bills are piling up. And sometimes it seems hopeless, but there are resources, programs. He began, his voice filled with conviction. That I wanted to scream that I couldn't do this, that it was much too much. The responsibility felt crushing, suffocating. I had to prioritize my mother, yet here was this man, offering a glimmer of hope that twisted painfully alongside my fear. That in that moment, something deep inside me cracked open, spilling out a raw, unexpected truth. I'm scared, I admitted in a choked whisper, my vulnerability laid bare beneath the weight of his gaze. Scared that I'm going to lose my mom. That I'm going to lose everything. The silence between us felt electric, charged with an understanding that painted the room in shades of connection and empathy. He stepped closer, bringing his hand to my shoulder, a simple yet powerful gesture that made me feel seen and anchored. We'll figure this out together, he promised, the words imbued with an urgency that settled like a warm embrace. But just as I felt myself surrendering to this newfound connection, the shrill ring of my phone sliced through the air, shattering that fragile moment. I glanced at the screen, my heart dropped as I saw the hospital's name displayed in bold letters. A storm of dread clenched at my chest. I have to get this, I murmured, retreating into the chaos as I answered, my fingers shaking. Hello. I forced the words out, an ominous pit forming in my stomach. That is this Miss Carter. We have urgent news regarding your mother's treatment plan. The nurse's voice came through, brisk and clinical. It's imperative that you speak. With the words washed over me like a wave crashing against my fragile sanctuary. Reality was knocking loudly, summoning me back to the precipice I had fought so hard to face. I met the chef's gaze, and in that instant, the connection I had begun to build felt perilously fragile against the unknown that awaited me. What are they saying? He asked gently, sensing the shift in my demeanor. That I don't know, I whispered, my voice tremulous as the weight of the unknown loomed large. But I have a sinking feeling it's not good. As I braced myself for the news, I saw him move closer, ready to stand by me against whatever storm was about to break, but a chilling thought swept through me. Couldn't let him in, couldn't let him witness the unraveling of everything I held dear. I felt trapped, a prisoner of fear that threatened to swallow me whole. Please, just I faltered, a rushing wave of uncertainty overwhelming me. Just give me a moment. But in that moment, the room felt too small, the entire world felt too close, and I could practically hear the clock ticking away the hours I had left. My heart raced as I slowly realized that this newfound thread of hope was tangled impossibly in the tumult of fragility surrounding me. Golden thread now frayed, hanging delicately on the edge of breaking. Whatever it is, well, face it together. You're not alone, the chef's voice cut through, a lifeline thrown into my turbulent sea, but inside, I was caught in an emotional whirlpool, afraid and yearning, desperate to hold on, yet terrified of what that really meant, and before I could respond, my breath hitched as I heard the words that would change everything. Miss Carter, we found something in your mother's recent tests. The nurse's voice deepened, and I felt my knees buckle under the weight of impending dread. Wait, what do you mean? I gasped, feeling the walls closing in as my thoughts spiraled into chaos. This was just the beginning, the cliffhanger of a life I once knew. What lay ahead was unimaginable, an abyss calling out in whispers I feared to follow. The air in the room grew heavy with tension, the nurse's words reverberating within the confines of my mind as if they were a dark prophecy. What did you find? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I felt his steady gaze on me, anchoring me in a sea of uncertainty. But even that solidity could not prevent the quaking in my heart. Miss Carter, we discovered a new complication regarding your mother's treatment. I need you to come in as soon as possible, the nurse continued, her tone as sterile as the hospital walls I had become all too familiar with. That I felt my world tilt dangerously on its axis. A complication? I echoed, my voice trembling. Anxiety coiled tighter around me, squeezing in my chest. What do you mean? There was a pause, a weighty silence that felt like a confession I was not ready to hear. It's the test results. I can't go into detail over the phone. Please, it's important. With tears brimming in my eyes, I hung up, a surreal blur of emotions washing over me. I turned to face him, searching for reassurance in the depths of his gaze, but all I found was a shared confusion mirrored back at me. They found something new. I was suddenly breathless, each word tumbling out like stones from a bag, heavy and unyielding. Her treatment, it's not working like we thought. Hey, he interjected gently, stepping closer, his presence nearly collapsing the distance that felt insurmountable moments ago. Let's take a breath. Well, figure this out. For the first time since this long struggle began, I felt a spark of defiance flicker deep within me. She can't be taken from me, I whispered, the enormity of the thought settling like ice in my veins. I felt a swell of tears pooling at the corners of my eyes, threatening to burst forth, but I fought against them. I had spent too long keeping the floodgates shut. Let's go to the hospital together, he said, his voice steady and comforting. You don't have to face this alone. I meant what I said earlier. You've got me. That I wanted to believe him. I craved that support in the darkest corners of my soul where dread often took root. But a voice whispered in the back of my mind, warning that letting him in would only make the inevitable loss more painful. But you don't know how this could go, I protested, scanning his face for any signs of hesitation. You might end up regretting it. Regret? No. He shook his head earnestly. Thinking I could just stand by while you deal with this on your own? Now that would be regrettable. His determination cracked the ice around my heart, allowing a trickle of warmth to seep in. But my fears clawed back, louder now. You have nothing to gain from being here. I could ruin your life, your work. Then let's take that risk together. He was relentless, the kindness in his eyes shining bright like a lighthouse amidst the fog of despair. Why are you doing this? I blurted, half in disbelief and half in gratitude. You don't know me or the weight I carry. His gaze softened, holding mine captive. I may not know all of it yet, but I want to. And I'll be with you. No matter how much you push me away. A flicker of hope ignited, spilling into the darkest corners of my mind. His willingness to stand by my side felt like a thread anchoring me in this moment of chaos. "Okay," I said finally, allowing the words to slip past my lips with effort. "Let's go." As we stepped outside into the cool air, the world felt both new and daunting. Each breath was laced with uncertainty, a reminder that while I held his hand there loomed a storm I was terrified to face. As we arrived at the hospital, the sterile walls felt all too familiar, yet today, something was different. I felt the tug of accountability. He was with me. When we reached the waiting area, time began to stretch unnaturally. Anxiety gnawed at my insides like a relentless tide. Nurses moved with hurried purpose, doctors appeared and disappeared through the corridors, and yet, all I could think about was my mother, whom I had worked so hard to shield from this world. Eventually, a doctor emerged, clipboard in hand, his face a mask of professionalism. "Miss Carter," he addressed me, his voice grave, drawing closer. "There are some things we need to discuss regarding your mother's condition." My heart dropped as dread unfurled within me, but then, I felt his familiar warmth beside me, silently affirming that I was not alone, bolstering my resolve as I tried to meet the doctor's serious gaze. The doctor spoke about protocols, symptoms, and potential treatment outcomes, but my mind spiraled in and out of focus, consumed by fear as his words fell heavy upon me. "I wish I didn't have to say this, but we've identified a growth that could complicate her prognosis significantly." His words felt cruel, slicing through the fragile sense of hope that had been carefully woven between us. A hollow ache settled deep in my chest, threatening to steal my breath away. It was perhaps the moment I understood how devastating it was to hope while standing on such precarious ground. "You need to be prepared," he continued, "for this may lead to a need for more aggressive treatment or an alternative approach." But he paused, and I felt a flicker of urgency as I leaned closer, listening intently. "There are options. We can consult with specialists who focus on integrative therapies that could change her treatment route significantly." His eyes bore into mine, searching for an ember of hope amid my turmoil. Before I could respond, I felt a firm grip on my hand, his fingers squeezing my own. I turned to find the chef looking at me with unwavering support, and suddenly, my thoughts crystallized. Perhaps I didn't have to face this daunting path on my own. But as I nodded, allowing a budding determination to rise again, a chilling thought gripped me, a memory flashing like a warning sign. What if I opened myself up to more heartbreak, more loss? Just then, the doctor's phone rang, a sharp jangling that twitched my heart. It was a call no one should ever have to receive, a call with the potential to twist my reality yet again. "I'm sorry, I need to take this," he muttered, stepping aside, leaving us suspended in unsettling silence. "What do we do now?" I asked, wiping my palms against my jeans as the weight of everything suddenly felt heavier. "Together, remember?" he whispered, his expression fierce yet kind, but at the edge of certainty lurked doubt, a storm brewing beneath the surface. And just as that camaraderie began to unravel my defenses, the doctor returned, his face pale, a shadow tracing the lines of his mouth. "Miss Carter, we have another issue," he said, each syllable wrapped in a shroud of foreboding. The ground beneath me shook ever so slightly as a new wave of fear loomed large, threatening to wash over everything I had fought so hard to protect. As uncertainty threatened to swallow me again, I felt the two opposing forces of hope and fear collide violently within, leaving me suspended on the brink of a life I could barely recognize anymore. The sterile quiet of the hospital room intensified as the doctor's words hung in the air like a suffocating fog. I clutched the chair I sat on, hoping it would somehow ground me against the tide of overwhelming emotion that threatened to drown me. "What issue?" I breathed, my heart pounding in my chest. He avoided my gaze, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. A chill swept through the room, chilling the warmth that had begun to envelop me. "The biopsies we've taken, we found results that necessitate immediate attention," he replied, his voice steady yet void of warmth. "And there's another growth we need to examine. This one is larger, more aggressive. We may need to discuss surgical options soon." The ground tilted beneath me, my hands shook as I thought of my mother, her laughter, her wisdom, all that she meant to me. I glanced at the chef beside me, his eyes wide with uncertainty, yet something else glimmered there, an invitation for me to lean on him, to share this burden instead of bearing it alone. "Okay," I whispered, but the word felt thin, brimming with fragility. What do we do? The doctor opened his mouth, hesitating, no doubt considering the gravity of his next words. I would recommend scheduling a consultation with a surgical team. They can offer insight into the potential benefits versus the risks involved. That I blinked rapidly, chasing away the sting of tears. Risks? I echoed, barely above a whisper. My heart felt like lead. The weight of the situation pressed down on my chest and tightened around my throat. Yes, Miss Carter, every procedure carries risks, especially with her condition. His clinical detachment felt cruel at this moment, like he was peeling back the layers of my heart with an unyielding scalpel. But it's crucial we move swiftly. The earlier we act, the better her chances. That I nodded slowly, trying to reconcile his words with the gasping fear that swelled within me. What if surgery only introduced new complications? What if, in the end, nothing could save her? Each heartbeat echoed a loss I wasn't sure I could bear. Do you want me to be there with you? The chef's voice broke through my turmoil, a lifeline extending from his heart to mine. I turned and found him searching my eyes, the warmth emanating from him like a comforting wave. The act of letting him in felt monumental. Yet knowing that he wanted to stand beside me ignited a flicker of hope in the dark abyss I had been wandering through. Please, I nodded, barely able to contain my emotions. The doctor cleared his throat, jotting down notes as he prepared to leave. He'll have someone arrange the consultation for you. Expect a call shortly. As he walked away, a heavy silence settled over the room, and I took a deep breath, feasting on the shared space between us. With the chef sitting so close, I could almost visualize the embrace of the support he offered, the promise that maybe I wouldn't have to shoulder this darkness alone. What's on your mind? He asked gently, sensing the storm raging beneath my surface. That I can't believe this is happening. I can't lose her. The mere thought of it struck a chord so deep in me that I felt it resonate in my bones. She's my world. That I know, he replied softly, a fluid honesty in his voice that calmed me, just for a moment. But we'll fight this together. No matter what it takes. A tremble escaped my lips, but his resolute presence steadied me, reminding me that perhaps hope and fear could coexist, and perhaps it was okay to believe in a future where my mother still fought. Just as I began to contemplate the possibility of that future, my phone chimed. A text message blinked insistently on the screen, shattering the fragile calm. When I glanced down, the glow illuminated a name that sent a jolt through my body, a name I hadn't heard in years. Is everything okay? The chef observed my expression, more from relief to dread. It's from my brother. My veins felt like ice as I traced the edges of the screen, memories flooding like a rushing river. We hadn't spoken since the family quarrel that had nearly torn us apart, and the timing of this message felt ominous. After everything going on, he chooses now to reach out. The disbelief dripped from my words, solidifying the tension. I hesitated before opening the message, the anticipation plucking at my heartstrings. Can we talk? I'm worried about Mom. The words hit me with a force I wasn't prepared for. I looked up at the chef, memories of our shared moments flickering in my mind amidst the shadows. What should I do? I asked, feeling small and vulnerable, wrapped in the warmth of his presence, yet suddenly aware of the storm brewing within my family. Whatever you feel is right, he said cautiously, meeting my gaze firmly. But remember, you don't have to fight this alone. You have May can be on your side, whether it means talking to him or simply being here while you do. But as I weighed the bittersweet decision, I wondered if my brother's return heralded another wave of chaos or an unexpected reconciliation. A part of me wondered if dragging him back into my life would only amplify the fractures, another force against the vulnerable heart I had opened up to the chef. With the weight of the decision pressing down on me, I felt a delicate balance of hope and apprehension maneuvering in my heart, leaving me suspended between past hurts and the fragile threads of potential healing. I drew a shaky breath and finally typed back a response, my fingers trembling, unsure of what to say but compelled to reach out nonetheless. Let's talk. I'm at the hospital. As I pressed send, I stole a glance at the chef, whose presence reminded me that even amid chaos, an unexpected kindness shimmered like a beacon of hope. but still, a storm loomed ahead, one I was not sure I'd be ready to face. The flickering fluorescent lights above me hummed a soft, deceptive melody, one that seemed at odds with the heaviness pooling in my chest. I leaned against the cold hospital wall, the texture familiar yet alien, the sterile scent clinging to my clothes, a constant reminder of the fear that gnawed at my insides. The brief moment of hope ignited by sending my brother a message manifested into a new layer of anxious anticipation. The chef's presence remained a balm amidst the restlessness in my heart. He hadn't left my side since the unsettling conversation with the doctor, his quiet strength wrapping around me like a warm blanket. And yet, despite his comforting solidity, I could feel the turmoil bubbling just below the surface, expanding into the quiet corners of my mind, stirring memories I had long buried. "Are you okay?" His question pulled me from my spiraling thoughts. I turned to see him watching me intently, his brow creased with concern. "That I am just fine," I lied, but even I heard the shaky edge to my voice. The truth was I wasn't okay. I felt like I was on a tightrope, teetering between past grievances with my brother and the current apprehensions of my mother's health. I glanced down at my phone, debating whether to throw it against the wall or cradle it gently like a dying bird. A day filled with so much uncertainty, and now the prospect of my brother's return hung like a storm cloud overhead. "It feels surreal," I finally admitted. "I didn't think he'd reach out, especially not now. What do you want to do?" he asked, keeping his voice steady, like the anchor of a ship caught in turbulent waters. My fingers traced the screen again, that persistent pinging reminding me of the message I'd sent. Part of me hoped for a simple response that would soothe the raging storm inside me, while another part dreaded the convoluted conversation to come. "I'm not sure. I'm scared but also relieved. It's complicated often leads to clarity," he said softly, his eyes searching mine, attempting to untangle the knots of my spiraling thoughts. "You have the right to feel however you do." The sincerity in his words resonated deeply, offering reassurance that was fluid yet firm. What if he comes back expecting everything to be okay? What if my voice cracked, revealing the tide of emotions that I'd been struggling to suppress? "Then let him know how you feel," he urged, his tone brimming with understanding. Communication can be the first step to healing. That I felt the warmth of his empathy wash over me, bringing forth traces of long-stifled anger and longing, a potent blend that threatened to overwhelm me. "You make it sound so easy," I scoffed, half laughing, half sobbing. "It's been years since he and I had a proper conversation, and now it's tied to my mom's health. It's like asking a sinking ship to sprout wings." The corners of his mouth turned up minutely as he regarded me, a rare spark of light flickering in his eyes. "I've always believed that sometimes, the most beautiful things come from the wreckage. It's the cracks that let the light in, you know." I contemplated his words, a reflection of my own fractured family. Beneath the chaos lay a desperate desire for repair, hope that remnants of love could still blossom despite the scars. "You've got a way with words, chef. Maybe you should write a cookbook with that kind of advice." The hint of laughter reverberated through the heaviness, a reminder of the fleeting moments of normalcy that felt almost like a distant memory. But adrift beneath those thoughts, another message arrived, a brief chime piercing the fragile laughter. I glanced down, my stomach twisting as I saw my brother's name flash across the screen again. "That I have to check this," I muttered, the weight of every syllable weighing heavily on my tongue. I opened the message, each word striking like a blow, and my eyes widened at the starkness of his honesty. "That I am sorry for how I acted last time we were together. I understand things are heavy right now, but I want us to work through this for Mom. She needs us both." A swell of untainted emotions crashed into me, the harsh pang of memories intertwined with the bitter taste of unspoken words. Beneath that thin veil of hope he offered was also the obvious challenge, the promise of shared responsibility and support, wrapped in all our complicated baggage. "What did he say?" the chef asked, his voice a soothing whisper amidst the rising tide of my emotions. "Not much," I replied, initially, but it didn't take long before I felt the urgency to express more. He's apologizing. Wants to talk about Mom." His brows furrowed slightly, the concern deepening in his eyes. "What do you think?" I want to say yes, but it's tethered to a lot of hurt. What if he doesn't come through? What if this is just another attempt to sway me back into that old pattern? Anxiety writhed in my gut as I tried to piece together the layers of my brother's intentions, then steer the conversation. Set the terms. You're in control, he assured me, every word fortifying the structure of my wavering resolve. Inspired by his gentle push, I typed a reply, a tentative embrace of possibility infused with a twinge of fear. Okay. Let's talk. Can you meet me here? As I pressed send, a whirlwind of mixed feelings enveloped me, anxious remnants of hurt against a threadbare curtain of hope. Just as I stepped back from my phone, the tension in the air thickened. A slight commotion echoed from the hallway beyond our small haven, fragments of voices threading through my consciousness. Just out of sight, a family member burst through the door, pale and frantic, their face a mask of grief and urgency. Excuse me. Is anyone here for Margaret Carter? They shouted, panic emanating from every syllable, striking a chord deep in my heart. In that moment, the world around me dimmed, replaced by a pulsating realization. Something was wrong, and the weight of it felt like a boulder crushing the breath from my lungs. I turned to the chef, fear filling the spaces between us like a suffocating fog. The storm I had feared looming dangerously close, ready to unleash its fury once more. Would this be the moment that shattered the hope I had just dared to embrace? As my heart quickened, I knew that whatever lay ahead stood to redefine not just our conversation with my brother, but the very fabric of my family's existence as we knew it. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air, mingling with the softer smell of fresh flowers, disparate elements of hospital life that often felt at odds with one another. My heart raced as I stared into the wide eyes of the frantic family member, my own pulse rhythmically drumming against my chest. I could barely hear the words they shouted, the urgency of their presence washing over my senses like a riptide. Margaret Carter. Is anyone here for her? Their voice reverberated through the corridor, a desperate plea that clawed at the edges of my composure. The chef, who had been my anchor through this turbulent sea, leaned closer. Stay here, he instructed, his voice low but firm, the resolve in his gaze matching the gravity of the situation. I nodded absently, unable to find words as the unease crept back in and settled heavily in the pit of my stomach, but the moment he stepped away to confront the growing chaos outside our room, I found myself grappling with the whirlwind of my thoughts. What could possibly be happening? Was Mom okay? I knew that uncertainty could breed panic, and yet I felt it surfacing with a vengeance. The door swung open, and my brother, the very source of my tangled emotions, appeared like a harbinger of both anxiety and relief. I got your message, he said, breathless, almost as if he had sprinted through the halls. His eyes searched mine, confusion and worry etching deeper lines into his face. The sight of him, both familiar and foreign, sent a shockwave through my core. I don't know what's happening, I managed to stammer, my words suspended in the tight air between us. The desperation in my voice seemed to echo in the hall, a reminder of the precarious state of our lives. As if the universe had conspired to deepen my emotional turmoil, another voice echoed through the doorway, the chef's voice tinged with his own unease as he shouted, "They've taken her for emergency surgery." The words, direct and raw, sliced through the clamor of anxious thoughts, anchoring me back into the present. My brother's expression shifted, worry morphing into apprehension. Surgery? Why? What happened? Each syllable seemed to tread heavier, like stones sinking into still water. We don't know. But they said it was serious, I replied, my throat tightening as I tried to quell the knot forming within me. It was too much, this uncharted territory of fear and uncertainty that I had envisioned slipping into with my brother years ago. Yet here we were, apprehensively stepping into the unknown together. Then the chef stepped closer, his presence solid as a boulder, the source of his quiet strength emerging even amidst the swell of alarm. Let's find out what's going on. Together. His words were a lifeline, anchoring me back to a semblance of control, and I nodded, feeling an unexpected surge of solidarity amidst the chaos. Let's go, my brother urged, forming a tight fist at his side. An implicit pact of loyalty forged in that moment as we turned toward the hallway, shadows stretching around us, and the weight of an unsaid understanding settling between us. The air was charged as we moved through the clamoring hospital corridors, each step echoing the urgency of my feelings. I could feel the eyes of strangers upon us, whispers quietly swirling, their own stories intertwining with ours, a tapestry drawn from a shared humanity encapsulated in a struggle that transcended words. With every door we passed, every nurse we glimpsed, I felt the world close in tighter, my mind racing with anxious possibilities. I had pictured this reunion with my brother differently, laughter and reconciliation suspended in the air, sorrows patched over with the balm of love. But now, this felt like a final test, a crucible forged in uncertainty and desperation. Yet even in the depths of despair, small moments of kindness emerged: a nurse's gentle smile as she ushered us in the right direction, a reassuring touch on the shoulder from my brother, reminders that humanity could shine light into dark corners. As we converged on the surgical waiting room, the clock ticked with an agonizing patience. My heart raced, each second expanding into an eternity, and I could feel my brother's quiet worry shadowing mine. What if he started, and I could see the unsaid "what if we lose her?" hanging just below the surface, waiting for the right moment to surface. "Then we face it," I replied, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "Together." The promise lingered, a wildfire just barely contained. An unexpected warmth surged within Marinid purpose, a reminder that even amidst the darkest storms, there could be a shared resilience. As we took our seats in the now crowded waiting room, I could feel the harsh reality sinking in, gnawing at the remnants of hope that had only begun to bloom between us. Yet just then, my phone buzzed, the noise cutting through the tension like a lightning strike. Confusion gripped me as I reached for it. It was a message from the chef, simple yet profound: "You are stronger than you realize." Lean on each other. Before I could process the encouragement, the air thickened with uncertainty, a hushed conversation rippling through the room, drawing our attention. A doctor emerged, and my heart plummeted, his expression grave. The air felt stifling, thick with the fear of the unknown. In that moment of silence, I glanced at my brother, his eyes locked with mine as we both braced ourselves for the impending storm. I couldn't ignore the tremble in my hands as I clutched my phone, waiting to hear the verdict of our fate, the outcome that would either shatter us or tether us closer than we had ever been before. The doctor cleared his throat, his eyes reflecting something deeper, an unspoken truth threatening to break through the fragile barrier of hope we had just begun to build. And in that moment, with the weight of words hovering just beyond the threshold, I realized that the real struggle was just beginning. The waiting room felt like a vacuum, swallowing sounds and emotions alike, leaving only an underlying hum of anxiety. I could sense my brother's knee bouncing under the table, his quickened breath matching the frantic beats of my heart. The doctor stood before us, his presence monumental, as if he were delivering the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Margaret Carter is out of surgery," he began, his voice steady yet laced with a gravity that sent my stomach spiraling. Relief initially pricked at the edges of my heart, but I knew better than to exhale too soon. "However, we need to discuss her condition." In that moment, time seemed to stretch, breaking into fragments that clashed against one another. I felt my brother's hand reach for mine, his grip tightening as if to anchor me to reality. "What condition?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper, stretched thin by worry. The doctor's gaze faltered for a fraction of a second before he continued. "There were complications during the procedure. We've stabilized her, but she will need significant recovery time, and her prognosis is uncertain." The phrase "uncertain prognosis" echoed in my mind, a cruel irony given how desperate I had become for clarity. A wave of emotion swept over me, drowning out the brief flicker of hope I had clung to just moments before. My brother gasped, and I had no choice but to turn my head away to avoid letting the tide of my own tears spill over. In that suffocating moment, the weight of my past collided with the uncertainty of the present. I was flooded with memories of family dinners that had been filled with laughter, teasing, and the delicious sense of her cooking Sundays spent sharing stories and recipes as my mother's gentle voice wrapped us in love. Now, the very essence of our family appeared as fragile as the heartbeat we were desperately trying to protect. Through the haze of emotions swirling around us, a comforting presence brushed against my side. It was the chef, who had appeared silently and stood there with such calm authority that for an instant, I could almost forget the gravity of our ordeal. His eyes held an understanding that transcended the fear we were all grappling with, and he offered me a small, empathetic smile that pierced through my despair. "You are not alone," he murmured, his voice enveloping me like a soft blanket against the cold of reality. Another nurse approached, handing him a cup of steaming tea, which he offered me with a solemn nod. I accepted it gratefully, allowing the warmth to seep through my fingers, grounding me amidst the chaos. My brother leaned closer, and I could see a vulnerability flicker within him, like an ember struggling to ignite amid a storm. "What now?" he asked, voice wavering between hope and despair. The doctor cleared his throat once more and explained the next steps, but the words blurred together, only punctuated by the dread that grew heavier in the air. I placed my head in my hands, feeling life's burdens pressing down while my brother buried his face in his knees. I was nowhere near ready for what lay ahead. But then, unexpectedly, a noise broke through my fog. A woman, clearly another family member experiencing a different struggle, had begun to weep softly nearby. The rawness of her sadness sent a shockwave through the room, drawing attention away from our silent suffering. Moments later, a young volunteer approached her with tissues in hand, a soft hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone. We're all here for each other," he whispered. The kindness in his words wrapped around me, tethering me to a sliver of emotional hope. I turned to the chef, who appeared to be taking in the quiet unfolding of connections around him. There was a beauty in witnessing shared vulnerability, and I felt a flicker of hope resonate within me. "Maybe we can do that, too," I whispered, voice almost lost amidst the emotions swirling within the room. He met my gaze, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly, unspoken encouragement weaving between us like an invisible thread. I suddenly realized that while our individual struggles felt daunting, there was a latent power in leaning on one another. That moment we had agreed to face everything together would not only apply to my brother and me. "Let's check on Mom when we can," I promised my brother through my wavering voice, allowing warmth to creep back into the uncertainty. "We're in this together," I repeated, attempting to steady both myself and him. Before he could respond, the door to the waiting room creaked open, and a nurse entered with a clipboard. She scanned the room and, upon locking eyes with the chef, approached him. "Excuse me, are you the chef Margaret often raves about?" she asked, a hint of surprise mixed with admiration lighting up her expression. The chef smiled, clearly taken aback, but before he could respond, I felt a swell of gratitude towards him unexpectedly spill within me. In that moment, it struck me just how many lives my mother had touched with her warmth, the ripple effect of love and care she had cultivated through her cooking, drawing in strangers and weaving bonds that had the potential to heal us all. Just as thoughts of hope welled up, my phone buzzed again, slicing through the fragile solace of that moment. My heart stuttered as I saw the name flashing on the screen, an unfamiliar number, but one that felt heavy with promise and fear. "Who is it?" my brother asked, unease flickering in his eyes. I took a deep breath, hands trembling as I pressed the button to answer. "Hello." A voice resonated on the other end, an old friend, one I hadn't spoken to in years, but somehow felt compelled to answer. "There's something you need to know about your mother." The weight of the words hung in the air, an unknown revelation threatening to shatter the precarious balance I'd just begun to reclaim. I never realized the millionaire chef was listening as I sang while washing dishes. The words hung heavily in the air, ricocheting off the walls of the waiting room like a jarring echo. My breath hitched as my heart plummeted into a pit of uncertainty. "What do you mean?" I pressed, trying to grasp the invisible threads of this unexpected conversation, feeling my brother's tension radiate beside me. "There's a lot I haven't told you about your mother," the voice on the line continued, deep and laden with urgency. "I think you need to hear it from me. Who is this?" I stammered, panic clawing up my throat as I glanced toward my brother. He had straightened up, his eyes fixed on me, wide and questioning. The intensity of his gaze urged me to keep listening, even as dread twisted my stomach. "That I know this is unexpected. I wanted to reach out sooner, but with everything going on, it felt wrong. I should have told you all of this before. It's about her past, about things she decided to keep hidden." That 1,000 questions surged through me, questions about secrets, memories that might change everything I thought I knew about my mother. My hand gripped the phone tightly, the warmth of the tea forgotten as everything else dulled to silence. I stole a glance at the chef, who had remained beside us, a stoic figure twitching with uncertainty at the emotional tide raging within me. "Why now?" I managed to utter, my voice quivering. "What do you think I need to know?" It's hard to explain over the phone. But I know she's in surgery, and I know you're waiting something might happen, you might need to understand her, to see her true self. She's done considerable work to protect you from the realities of her past. A pause hung in the air, and I could hear my brother's sharp intake of breath, mirroring the unease brimming within me. Please, I said, feeling the weight of truth like a rock in my chest. Just tell me that. I felt the chef step closer, a silent pillar of strength, offering a nonverbal support that brought a modicum of calm in the chaos swirling through my mind. The person you think you know isn't the whole story. Your mother was involved in a world very different from the one you've experienced, a world that could have put her in serious danger. She fought hard to shield you from it, but it might be wise to understand it now. Danger? I repeated, the concept almost unfathomable. What are you saying? There were choices she made. It's about the life she lived before settling down, before the recipes and family gatherings. I'm not the right person to tell you, but you need to hear it. I'll be in touch. Just keep your heart open. With that, the line went dead, leaving me hanging in the suffocating silence of the waiting room, caught between two worlds, the one I had always known and the fragmented reality now threatening to unravel everything. My heart raced, an echo of desperate thoughts battling to be heard. What was that about? My brother breathed, his voice barely masking the alarm playing beneath. Don't know. I barely managed to respond, feeling stripped of the security I had clung to in the wake of the latest news about our mom. I looked back at the chef, hoping for understanding. He seemed to grasp the weight of the situation, his expression a mix of sympathy and concern. Maybe I hesitated, struggling to put into words the cacophony in my head. Maybe she wasn't just being the mom we thought she was. Maybe there's so much more. It sounds like it, he replied quietly, his voice a gentle acknowledgement of my confusion. But whatever it is, she's still your mother. And whatever choices she made, they were for you. My brother grasped my arm with a comforting squeeze, seeking to anchor me in this turmoil. We can't let this put us down. We need to focus on her recovery. Just then, a nurse buzzed through the door again, urgency stitched into her steps as she scanned the room. The doctors are ready for visitors. You can see Margaret now. But keep your questions brief. She's very weak. A wave of dread washed over us as we exchanged wary glances. There was truth buried deeper than we had ever known, and it threatened to surface now, at the moment when we had hoped to find solace in her familiar love. With one last look at the chef, who offered a reassuring nod, I stood shakily and turned to my brother. Let's do this. We walked toward the nurse, heartbeats in sync, even as the world spun around us in confusion. As we approached the door, another wave of uncertainty crashed over me. What would we find on the other side? A mother, yes, but who else? Just as the nurse opened the door to the private room where our mother lay, my phone buzzed again, sending fresh adrenaline surging through my veins. Would this revelation inspire strength or drag us further into the unknown? I hesitated, glancing at the screen to see another unfamiliar number. Go, my brother urged, eyes wide with fear and concern. I knew the flame of our future dimmed, standing on a precipice of revelation, a whisper from the past waiting to shatter everything I held dear. I answered the call, and my heart seized at the first word. Margaret. As her name hung in the air, I realized that whatever was ahead, this moment was just the beginning of something profound. As we stepped into the hushed room, memories intertwined with the soft beeping of machines that surrounded my mother. Her frail figure lay still beneath layers of crisp white sheets, a hint of color lost in the pallor of her skin. I swallowed hard, the gravity of the situation settling heavily on my chest. Beside me, my brother clenched his fists, wearing the same look of uncertainty I felt. Mom, I whispered, stepping forward as if my heart could compel her to wake. But she remained drifting in unconsciousness, trapped between a world of memories and the present, a living testament to the fragility of life. As the nurse gently adjusted the foredrip, I sensed my brother inching closer to the edge of despair. We shouldn't have waited so long to come together, he murmured, guilt evident in his voice. I turned to him, searching for words that could soothe the turmoil in his eyes. Maybe this is what we needed, I murmured softly, not entirely convinced. To have this moment together, as a family. His gaze met mine, and I noticed a flicker, an ember of understanding passing between us. The chef stepped in beside us, a respected silent witness to our reunion. His presence was a quiet reassurance amidst the chaos. "You're not alone," he whispered, as if sensing the weight of unspoken truths looming in the air. The unyielding bond between us woven through shared struggles reminded me that there was strength to be found in unity. Just then, a gentle stir broke through the silence. My mother's eyelids fluttered, and I felt my heart leap at the glimmer of hope ignited in the room. "Mom!" I barely managed to get the words out before I heard her soft, strained voice emerging like a fragile melody. "Sweetheart." She croaked, her eyes still clouded but searching, fear and recognition painted on her features. In that moment, I found a combination of relief and dread tightening within me, and from the corner of my eye, I saw my brother stiffen. "Mom, we're here," he said, his voice shaky but filled with love. "We're right here." The warmth of our presence enveloped her, and for the first time, I felt a sense of completeness, like we had arrived at a turning point. Just breathe," I encouraged, fear again mingling with hope as she took our hands, a familiar touch that anchored all that was precious and vulnerable. But before I could voice my questions, the chef leaned closer, almost instinctively, as if sensing the swell of truth that threatened to break from my mother's lips. "Mom, there's something I need to discuss with you," I began, swallowing past the knot in my throat, my heart racing even at the mention of the call I had received. "About your past, about you." Her brows furrowed as understanding flickered in her eyes, the weight of secrets poised to spill. "You heard, didn't you?" she whispered, almost defeated. "That I did," I replied, hesitant but steady in my conviction. "And I need to know. We need to understand why you've kept all of this hidden." The urgency in my tone made it clear I was both terrified and courageous, ready to pull back the curtain that had cloaked our shared history. "That I did it to protect you," she replied, voice too weak but filled with the heaviness of regret. "You don't know what I've experienced. The choices I made, they haunt me still." That I glanced at my brother, whose face mirrored my own uncertainty. "Mom, we need to know why. It could help us understand each other better," he pressed, the sincerity in his voice urging her to open up. With a deep, shuddering breath, our mother entreated, "It's not an easy story to tell, but you're right. You deserve the truth." I felt the room around us thrum with anticipation. Every heartbeat mirrored the significance of the moment that awaited USA's story, long shrouded in shadows, finally at the brink of revelation. But before she could begin, a soft knock interrupted the solemn gathering. The same nurse returned, her expression softened with empathy. "I'm sorry to intrude, but we're ready to discuss the next steps regarding your mother's treatment." It's important. That I glanced at my mother, and I'd never seen her look so conflicted. "Can we finish this first, please?" I begged the nurse, clutching at the remnants of a fragile connection that hung between us. After a pause, the nurse nodded, compelling but respectful of our shared moment. "Very well," I'll return shortly. With that, she slipped out, leaving us ensconced in our fragile cocoon of uncertainty. That my mother took a deep breath, as if summoning the strength to share. "Years ago, I was involved in things, dangerous things that you can't even begin to imagine," she began, her voice trembling. "I made choices I thought were necessary to survive, but they came at a great cost. It was a life of chaos and shadows, one I fought to break away from when I started our family." Each word unfolded like a tapestry woven with both beauty and pain. A family she chose to protect from a past she wished could be erased. My brother clenched my hand, each revelation echoed with a bittersweet harmony as my mind raced to comprehend the complexity of the woman I had known all my life. Tears brimmed in my mother's eyes, her vulnerability a raw reminder of the battle she fought against her own demons. "I wanted you both to have a chance, a pure life. I never wanted you to bear witness to the darkness I made choices to escape." In that moment, I realized that she was not just a mother but a warrior who chose love as her shield. "Mom, we understand why you did what you did," I whispered, tears cascading down my cheeks. "But we're here now. We want to understand together." She nodded slowly, the weight of her past mingling with the hope of a possible future. Our hands wrapped around hers, uniting once more in shared love and understanding. But then it struck me, here was a twist we still sought to navigate. "Mom," I pressed gently, my heart racing with necessity. The call I received, it said we might need to face the truth. Are you ready to embrace everything together? Her gaze steadied, a moment of bravery sparking in an otherwise fragile heart. Facing the truth means embracing the love we've built through hope, vulnerability, and forgiveness. It's the hardest revelation, but it's one we must pursue for all of us. I stood silent, my heart pounding. The risk of unraveling hidden pains loomed ahead, but the blossoming sense of connection beckoned us forward against the tides of uncertainty. Just then, the nurse re-entered, her presence shattering the fragile tension. We're ready to discuss your mother's condition. Together, we turned to face the imminent conversation with a solidified bond, the burdens of our past and the uncertainty of our present. Each of us acutely aware that the foundation of love and vulnerability had been forged through the darkest of storms. And as I held the hands of my brother and mother, I felt the depth of possibility beckoning us toward a future of hope and healing, a future gained through forgiveness, acceptance, and the tender threads binding us together beneath it all. And with strength pooling in my heart, I realized that whatever lay ahead, it was not just redemption for my mother, but a chance for us as a family to step into the light from the shadows of yesterday. After all, it is in the darkest moments that we often find our strongest voices, the symphony that can carry us through and soar above anything life brings. Ultimately, the love we shared becomes woven into the fabric of our being, holding us fast, resilient against the tide. We finally forged into a new dawn, together as one. This is our story now, I whispered softly, and with that, I felt the powerful promise of a new beginning unfold, a moment filled with both closure and rebirth, a promise that we would not drift apart, but rather grow, heal, and discover who we could be. With burgeoning hope etched across our faces, we all held that promise tightly in our hearts. And together, we stepped forward.